I'm happy to get to interview Victoria Fariello. She's our second candidate we're hearing from tonight who is running for New York State Senate District 29 in Manhattan. Now, Victoria's response to the Amplify Her questionnaire identified her priorities as true affordable housing, Environmental Bond Act and green jobs, and transit funding and accessibility. So Victoria, a reminder, 90 seconds for these first few questions. You'll get a reminder in the last 30 seconds. In your candidate info form, you mentioned how you strive to uplift women of color. You also named the New York Health Act as one of your top 3 legislative priorities after taking office. At the moment, one of the biggest healthcare issues that women of color, including Black and Indigenous women, are facing is the maternal mortality and morbidity. Statistics show that these women are 3 times more likely than white women to die during pregnancy or childbirth because of racial bias and medical negligence. Safer resources for them, such as midwives and doulas, are not always covered by insurance plans. Here's the question, finally. If elected, which kind of legislative or budgetary measures would you take to ensure that women and pregnant persons of color are able to access safer alternatives during pregnancy and childbirth?
Thanks so much for the question, and thank you so much to Amplify Her for this opportunity. Truly amazing. So yes, indeed, the New York Health Act is one of my priorities. As you know, people, medical debt is the #1 cause of racial state in the United States. So which to me is unbelievable that a civilized country would not provide basic medical needs for people. And coming to the question about maternity for women of color in particular, so any health care act should include doulas or birthing assistants, giving people the opportunity to choose how they're going to give birth and how they can access these different. And I'm sorry, forgive me. Obviously, I'm very new, first-time candidate, so forgive me. And I'm sorry, there was another part of the question.
So legislative budgetary measures that you would take to ensure that women and pregnant persons of color are able to access safer alternatives to pregnancy and childbirth.
Okay, so obviously with any kind of healthcare act, we would have to make sure that the budget would cover that. And there is actually, the New York Health Act does provide for taxation. And when I've been out on the street, people ask me, well, if you're going to tax so that people can be covered for healthcare, then people are going to leave New York. And I said, but actually, what you pay in healthcare is more than what you would be paying in taxes to cover healthcare for everyone. So I think we do have to change this narrative, and I apologize because I feel like I didn't answer your question completely, but I do think that in maternity in particular, and especially with women of color, there's so many resources that we don't address and which we need to address.
Thank you very much. That's okay. First-time candidate jitters. You got your first question done. So now we're going to the second question. Labor is a major part of your policy platform. Immigrants make up a significant part of New York's labor force. Last year, New York State approved the historic Excluded Workers Fund, which provided payments to undocumented immigrants and other non-traditional excluded workers who were excluded from the federal pandemic relief funds. The $2.1 billion fund ran out less than 6 months after launching, while thousands of applications were still pending. Now, advocates are calling for the fund to be replenished. If elected, what will you do to ensure that New York's undocumented immigrant workers receive pandemic-related assistance?
So thank you for that question. It's incredibly important. New York runs on immigration, runs on undocumented immigrants as well. So we would absolutely have to fund that and fully fund it, and make sure not only that it's funded, but the funds get out. Because part of the problem with distributing the funds is that undocumented immigrants are scared of coming forward and saying and applying for these funds. So we have to make sure that when we have the programs in place, that we also have a system in place that lets them know that they are safe, that they will not be subject to any kind of immigration violations or brought to ICE or any other agency that could cause trouble. So I think it's really important that we do fund that. And I also think, one of the causes I care deeply about is, and while they're not undocumented, but they're women immigrants who are home care attendants and who have been paid for 13 hours of work when they've actually worked 24 hours. And we do have bills that are now would end a 24-hour workday and that would raise the wages for these workers, but a lot of these workers are still being forced to work 24 hours and only being paid 13 hours. And one of the things that these employers use is, well, we will turn you in if you're a resident if you don't sign and say that you've only done 13 hours, even when they've done 24. So immigrants are really vulnerable, and we need to make sure that we protect them.
Thank you. Now, what makes you a better fit for this state Senate seat than your opponents? So this is your opportunity to brag.
Which I love. So I heard Maya say this, but I was not looking to run. I am a district leader, which for those of you who don't know, that means I represent Democratic voters to the Democratic Party. And as in my role as a district leader, I've actually done a lot of work within the Democratic Party to change it, to make it more democratic. Having done this kind of work and other work around the community, including with home care attendants, as well as a lot of construction that's going on with today the jail. I was actually arrested this morning at jails. They're going to build a jail, mega jail in Chinatown, and I'm part of this community. So I've been here over 25 years. I've raised 4 children, or am still raising. Some of them are here. 4 children here in the community. I have a business. I run a business in this community. And the community leaders reached out and said, would you please run? We need someone who shows up and understands our issues and knows our causes. And when we call, you show up and you do something about it. And that is something that I really do and I really care about, is not just saying, this is wrong, this is bad, this didn't work, this doesn't work, but actually doing something about it, finding the legislation, finding the people or the partners that'll work with you to make things happen. And that's really, so I think I have no skin in the game in terms of politics, right? This is not my career, but it is my passion.
Thank you. And our next question, you're going to be able to actually elaborate on what you just talked about, because you mentioned you're a district leader and you supported women candidates in various elections. You're also a practicing attorney. What role have you played in non-electoral efforts? Which grassroots community groups are you involved in Senate District 29?
Thank you. So grassroots, one of my, and so those of you who know me as a candidate, 5 World Trade Center is a huge part of what has been happening this past year. About a year ago, the Lower Manhattan Development Corporation, the LMDC, announced that they would build 80 stories of luxury apartments downtown. The community said, we have lost thousands of affordable housing units. Over 5,000, just off the top of my head, I can tell you the complex that we've lost. We want 100% affordable housing. And of course, everyone looked at us like we had 3 heads. They said, yeah, that's great, 80 stories of affordable housing. But we insisted, and we started, so when our elected officials weren't responding, we started going around and talking to our political groups and started building a coalition with a number of different organizations and the political clubs. And we started to get everybody signing up. Last summer, I was able to get every single district leader in Manhattan to sign on, to send a letter to Governor Kathy Hochul saying that we want 100% affordability. So we've gotten to the point where we actually have gotten a commitment from Representative Jerry Nadler to help us find the funding and write legislation if it's necessary. And we also have Carolyn Maloney, who said she would help us do the same thing. So we are at a point where we can actually make this happen. Now, of course, it's not a done deal, but we'll still keep at it. But as So that's one. So it's the Coalition for 100% Affordable Housing, Affordable 5 World Trade Center. Please sign up. Please sign our petition. Forgive me for that.
Thank you. And now our last question, you have 2 minutes, so you have a little more time. You have the opportunity to speak about a policy issue of your choice that the previous questions did not give you the chance to highlight.
Thank you. So I might cheat a little, maybe do two. But one is anti-corruption. So to me, the work with Five World Trade Center and all the other work that I've done as a district leader with the community comes down to one very simple thing: transparency. We do not have enough transparency from our government, and we don't have enough participation or receptiveness from our communities to what happens in our communities. We are basically looked at, especially in New York City, we're looked at as a Lego land. People will come and they say, oh, wait a second, I think we're gonna build something here, and we're gonna knock that down, we're gonna move this over here, and oh, maybe we'll put a tree there. And nobody talks to the community, right? And the community not only is there and exists and deserves a voice in what happens, but the community always has amazing ideas. When you're connected with the community and you hear what people say, they have amazing ideas that you can really build on. So, transparency and anti-corruption, taking money out of politics. I mean, first-time candidate, I don't have to tell anyone who's been a first-time candidate how incredibly hard it is to raise the funds, right? But then we find, again, I can use Five World Trade Center because we just discovered that the Lower Manhattan Development Corporation has been using the lobbyists for Silverstein and Brookfield to write their programs, even their meetings with us. And that, again, is a problem for say the 30 seconds. So transparency and having access to our government is incredibly important. And the other one was, oh my gosh.
Any policy issue of your choice that you want to highlight?
And I guess the other one is housing. So one thing I would propose is taxing empty luxury apartments. That could help us fund affordability, and it would help us, it would encourage a decrease in the cost of the rentals.
Thank you very much, Victoria. Round of applause.